Hello and a warm welcome here to the Pitchside podcast and a new episode of the show. I am your host, the HOD of the BSB. Like, share, comment on this YouTube version of the podcast and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Enable notifications to receive all the updates from these podcast episodes you can listen to on Spotify, Google Podcasts or any other platform. And follow his social media, I'm at BSB on Twitter, PitchsidePod on Instagram. Help us on the way to our first K. Of course, we need to reach that before the Euros so you can, work on a clean slate really for the Euros and, focus on growing the audience even further. Join us for more and you are welcome. We're going to get to the Champions League Quarter-finals, of course, in a bit, but we're not going to be starting from there. We're going to be starting from some results around Europe, of course, in some midweek football was played around Europe, particularly Serie A, La Liga, and the quarter-final of the German Cup. Let's start from Italy, though. Two games that I think, crucial in the grand scheme of things for the Serie A. Inter Milan managed to defeat Sassuolo 2-1 in a game that, Sassuolo really were the better side. I mean, it was a defensive game from Inter. You could not really believe it unless you see it. I mean, Sassuolo played a better game, and obviously they would do because Roberto Di Serbi is someone who doesn't really hold back. He doesn't play a defensive game exactly. 3-5-2 for him as usual. It doesn't really change too much. I mean, he makes his team, looks very exciting. Sassuolo, one of the best teams in Serie A, really I like to watch them, but against a side as pragmatic as Conte's Inter this season, you could not really get a lot of points, if any. This is, by the way, the 9th victory for Inter Milan in a row in Serie A at the moment, and it looks like they're on such a strong series at the moment, such a strong win streak for Inter Milan that it's almost impossible really to stop them. It's just incredible really for Inter Milan at the moment. Their last the last 8 games, successive victories in Serie A, and of course, they're really getting closer to the title. Like, if you didn't believe it before, you had to believe it now. It's now 11 points ahead of Milan, and it looks impossible at the moment for any team to catch up with them. I mean, with 9 games left of the season, it's going to need a colossal sort of recovery from the other clubs, plus a colossal collapse from the other, from Inter Milan themselves, so that Milan, Juventus probably could catch up with them in the table. And speaking of Juventus, of course, Inter Milan scored thanks to Matteo Lukaku and Martinez in the 10th minute and 67th minute, and the 85th minute goal from Sassuolo was pretty much a goal that they deserved for their game, but didn't get them the full 3 points, of course, from this one, or even a point, really, from this one. Speaking of Juventus, back again, their game against Napoli almost followed the same model, at least in the second half. The first half wasn't exactly great from both sides, really. It was, here and there. Not exactly fast, but also not exactly slow. Juventus managed to sting Napoli early on with a 13th minute Cristiano Ronaldo opener, thanks to Federico Chiesa assist, who was, one of the best players really on the day for Juventus. And in the second half in particular, it was mostly one-sided really, but somehow, Juventus still managed to score the seconds thanks to Dybala, who came as a substitute for Alvaro Morata, returning from injury, scoring. I mean, that's what you need from Paulo Dybala. This is the Paulo Dybala that you needed. He actually played fantastically for the amount of time he got on the pitch. Lorenzo Insigne got a goal for Napoli that they also deserved for their second half performances. And, there was a couple of penalty shout-outs that really could have gone either way and really debatable, one in either half. Handball, I think, on the handball on Alexandro, and also a tackle on Alexandro in the first half, and both accidents involved Victor Osimhen from Napoli, who had a terrific game for all sort of the bad numbers he had with Napoli this season. Didn't have exactly the greatest of numbers with Napoli, but he had a terrific game yesterday against Juventus. Napoli, I think, should have gotten a draw, at least in this one. This result is not going to hurt them. It's not going to hurt Juventus a lot in their top 4 ambitions. Of course, the victory gives them 59 points, but they're pretty sandwiched really between Atalanta and Milan, and this could go either way. Really, they could go either into the Champions League, or they could go out of it. Napoli's 36 points, they're not exactly that far. And of course, there's going to be a fierce battle, I think, for those spots. Of course, the fourth spot is going to be a fierce battle for it in the rest of the games of the season. Moving on from Serie A, of course, to La Liga, Real Sociedad, who met Athletic Bilbao just a couple of days earlier and defeated them for the Cup in 2020 Copa del Rey version. They only ended in a 1-1 draw. Of course, Roberto Lopez equalised in the 89th minute after Asia Libre scored in the 85th minute, almost guaranteeing a victory for Athletic Bilbao, but it wasn't to be. Real Sociedad managed to get a point that would give them a 5th place and, of course, a qualification to the Europa League. Of course, they still have to dispute it, though, with Real Betis and Villareal, who are pretty close with them at 46 points as well. And finishing off, of course, in the quarterfinal of the the DFB-Pokal in Germany, it was Regensburg in the last quarterfinal. Of course, it was postponed for COVID restrictions, playing against Werder Bremen. Of course, Werder Bremen managed to win 1-0. Yuya Osako scoring the 52nd minute goal, and although Regensburg had, a bit of a flurry in the last couple of minutes, it wasn't to be. It was Werder Bremen's night, and they go to the semi-final of the DFB-Pokal, where Bremen are going to be facing RB Leipzig, while Borussia Dortmund are going to be facing the underdogs, the Minnows, the team that eliminated Bayern Munich from the competition, Holstein Kiel. Let's get into now the business. Of course, the Champions League quarter-final, the second pair was played, and, the results were not exactly exciting, at least if you are a Bayern Munich fan like me. The loss against PSG 3-2, of course, it was literally unbelievable, because you think Bayern, with all the chances that they had in the game, with all the amount of opportunities, the shots on target they have, the incredible numbers of opportunities they have, and the momentum they had in this game, you think they're going to be winning, but it wasn't to be. I said in the review that Bayern Munich deservedly, I think, lost, considering the circumstances of the game, and I still stand with this, because, again, I'm not a man of could have beens and should have beens, and if this happened, and if that happened, and all of that, and if Lewandowski was there. I mean, it's Bayern. We're talking about Bayern, a team with pedigree in Europe. You shouldn't be, dependent on one player, whoever he is, and whatever the numbers he makes, and his numbers are legendary, by the way. I mean, obviously it would still feel bad, because Lewandowski, had he been there, at least a couple of chances would have converted into the net, and it probably would have been a different result. But who knows, if he was there, it would be a different game in PSG as well, because, again, that's why I shouldn't be getting into the could-haves and should-haves, really, and the could-have-beens and should-have-beens. Flick, I think, had a plan in his mind to sort of, play a bit of a defensive lineup at the start, but once he realised that the PSG side is going to be playing counter-attack football and going to be sitting deep, and after the first goal came too early, I think, for his liking. I mean, an early goal always messes up the tactics, really. It's just like an injury, just like a red card at the beginning of the game. It always messes up the tactics, and it did. The goal from Mbappe really messes up the tactics of the day, and Flick had a game in hand, but, sort of changed it after that, and the substitutions, I think, were pretty indicative of that, with Alphonso Davies coming in for Leon Goretzka, Jerome Boateng coming in for Niklas Süle, although I would really give him credit, because Alaba playing in the middle wasn't exactly bad. He actually played really well, and, considering the kind of game that Bayern had, it was a pretty good idea, really, because PSG didn't have a strong player in the midfield to really counter him. No Verratti or Paredes. Idrissa Gueye, I mean, isn't exactly 100% at his best form in terms of, retrieving balls and going forward and really starting the attack. There's no player for Paris Saint-Germain who would get the ball under the press and would, take it out of the middle and just transition forward pretty smoothly. I mean, it has to be Di Maria dropping, or it has to be Neymar dropping to take the ball from the middle. I mean, those guys were forced to do jobs that they usually don't, really. We saw Mbappe defending in the second half alongside Richel Bakker when he got subbed on. I mean, PSG don't have fullbacks, by the way. This is a conclusion that is easily to really see for anyone. They don't have fullbacks, and Bayern Munich, I think, saw that and tried to work on the crosses, work on the wingers, and I think Sane and Koeman had the better of the right backs and fullbacks. I mean, completely overwhelmed them, and with the introduction of Davis, it just added more speed. But again, the game, I think, should be summed up in terms of efficiency versus domination, and that was the victory for efficiency, I think, for Paris Saint-Germain. Deserved victory, I would say. I'm not taking anything from them because they had injuries in them, they had absences that were really, really important. But you think that, I mean, this should have been a fairly different scoreline. There should have been at least two other goals for Bayern, really, considering the chances that they have. But again, when you're not efficient, you concede, and on the three moments, like really the few moments that PSG got into the goal, they scored. I mean, from 5 shots, they scored 3, and you really cannot ask for a better efficiency and a better scoring conversion rate from PSG. I mean, while Bayern Munich had 12 shots on target and they scored 2, so that's quite the difference in the conversion rate. I mean, this is a game that is still pretty wide open. I mean, I still have a belief that Bayern are going to be going through, they're going to be doing it somehow in Paris, because Verratti is going to be still missing in the second game. You have, I don't know if Lewandowski is going to be available for the second game, and also there's a big factor in between. Paris Saint-Germain still need to play strong sides in the league. They still need to play a big game in the league. And Bayern Munich, though, with 7 points that they had of Leipzig in the Bundesliga, I think they'll have the luxury to sort of play the second string of players, really, make some changes, and make some substitutions. But of course, with the unavailability of the likes of Gnabry and Rocker, that option is also off the table. Douglas Costa is injured as well. You have a Tolisso long-term injury. If people forgot about that, that's a long-term injury for him. His season was over. So the options are not there for Flick to use. I mean, he's pretty much got to play the same side here. I mean, he can rotate only 1 or 2 players really at the very best. He's going to need to change the whole lineup really, unless Sula and Goretzka are not injured. Which, I mean, but again, by all accounts, it's both injury substitutions, which I think is going to be bad for Bayern. In my opinion, the second game is going to be really, really wide open. The tie is going to be wide open with the two sides. And if PSG, I think, in my opinion, I believe strongly that PSG, if they play the same game in France, they play the same game in Parc des Princes, they will lose. They will definitely lose, and they will lose by quite the scoreline as well. Because, again, with no Verratti, and, Paredes probably will come back, but we all know he's not the kind of player that Verratti is. We all know that, Bayern are going to be dominating the midfield, and, they're still going to be playing balls behind, they're going to be playing crosses. Marquinhos' injury, I think, was a pretty crucial turning point. I didn't mention that in the review a lot, but I think it was a crucial point in the game. I mean, most people believe that Bayern, would have not scored. I believe that they would have. I think they would have at least got one back, even with Marquinhos on, because the fullbacks were completely overtaken and overwhelmed by Bayern Munich's play. Sane on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, and Koeman on the left-hand side. The support of Davids, the support of Alaba. Bayern were pouring numbers forward, and that's where they get caught. I mean, probably the draw would have been worse of a result than the loss, because at least Bayern now have an incentive to go at PSG, because the draw would have been really more disappointing, considering that PSG would probably sit deep and try to play 10 in the back and try to really bounce on the counter, and that would put Bayern Munich in a panic mode. Now it's up to Flick to see what he's going to be doing in the next couple of games, really, in the Bundesliga, and also before that second leg of the Champions League. You have a match against Union Berlin. It's not exactly easy, but also he has big aspirations of Union Berlin to finish as high in the Bundesliga as they can. So it's not going to be exactly the easiest of games, but still, whatever it is, he needs to rotate players more, and he keeps players fresh for the second leg. If Lewandowski is available, that is going to be a plus. If he's not, that is going to be the same game, I think, from Bayern. As far as PSG are concerned as well, they still have some big games to play in the league. In fact, they played against Strasbourg on Sunday. It will be quite the trip, really, for them. It's hard for them. Every game is hard for them now, with 3 points behind Lille and 7 games left on the table. They need to catch up. They don't want to lose. the French league. So that's, I think, a big factor that should be getting into play really when talking about the second leg. The fact that, both teams have different ambitions in their league and different sort of situations in their league, that's going to be affecting them. I mean, as a Bayern fan, hopefully for the better, hopefully it exhausts PSG for more, and Bayern would find some sort of solace in the second leg, which is going to be definitely harder, and obviously it will be as exciting. Side note, the game was incredibly beautiful. It was end-to-end stuff. It was never dull, but realistically speaking, I still think Bayern are going to be going through unless PSG put on a perfect performance. And what I mean by the perfect performance is defending really well, not letting Bayern get inside the box, because if they get inside the box, they will score. I mean, Bayern are a side that learns from their mistakes and do not make the same mistake of not finishing or not being efficient twice. So the game is still open, still up for grabs, and we'll see how Bayern are going to be, trying to approach the game against Union Berlin in the league, and of course the game against PSG in the Champions League away from home. In the second game in the quarterfinal of the Champions League, the second pairing, of course, Chelsea managed an away victory against Porto, and they weren't the better side. Let's face it, Porto were the better side. They were absolutely better than Chelsea. I mean, they didn't exactly put on a great performance, Chelsea, but still got enough to win, getting the victory against Porto away from home. I mean, technically, not away from home. Technically, it's a neutral venue, really. They played at the Ramon Sanchez Pizjuan in Sevilla. The second game is going to be played there as well. I mean, I still understand why away goals count in these kind of situations. I mean, this is going to be a reason probably why the away goal system is going to be probably looked at and reviewed pretty strongly. The game was, again, it was incredibly tight, not exactly exciting as the other one. So Chelsea, I think, managing a 2-0 victory there with the least of damage, considering that Porto had the better chances. They were dangerous, particularly on set pieces. We all know that since watching the Juventus game, really. They are dangerous side on set-piece play, and, the 2-0 result, I think, doesn't leave a lot of room for Porto to make a comeback, although everything is possible in football, and if people saw the game against West Brom for Chelsea, I think they would believe it. And I think it was a perfect bounce back after the game against West Brom, at least in terms of the result for Chelsea. It's the perfect opportunity to bounce back, to prove that they can still be a good team. And for all things considered, really, they pretty much have a foot in the semi-final of the Champions League, and that in itself is considered an achievement. Like, that is a major achievement for Thomas Tuchel. Considering that, the criticism that had been thrown at him, considering the amount of, of criticism that had been thrown at him after the game against West Brom. There have been some sort of negative talk already about Thomas Tuchel after one defeat. But again, to bounce back against a side like Porto, not easy at all, by the way. I mean, a side that is dogged, again, defended really well, did not allow Chelsea a lot of room, in fact, to create a lot of chances. And, Chelsea played their usual system with 3-4-2-1, at least the usual under Thomas Tuchel. And, knowing that they have, some sort of positive game to play. They needed to play an offensive game against Porto. They knew that Porto were going to be the side they're going to be defending the most, so they played a side set up to attack as much as possible, I would say. But again, on set pieces, Porto could have been dangerous and had a couple of opportunities to be really, really dangerous on set pieces. I mean, overall, Chelsea bouncing back is really good. The victory is absolutely important. The fact that, Mason Mount and Ben Chilwell, of all people, scored means that you still have a problem of strikers there. You still have Timo Werner not able to score. You still have Kai Havertz not able to score. Hakim Ziyech was a sub and he wasn't even introduced. I mean, I thought that it was a weird choice for this one. I thought he should have had at least half an hour in the second half. But eventually, the 2-0 victory for Chelsea against Porto is going to be the most important thing heading into the second leg, where, again, why there is away goals in this one, where both played on neutral venue, you don't know. But with the home advantage, quote-unquote, it's really for Chelsea. It's going to be, I think, an easy game to deal with. Chelsea should have the ability to get through the next game unscathed. I mean, I don't really. It will need a collapse. It will simply need a collapse from Chelsea for Porto to score 3 goals at least, which is the needed amount. So, I mean, this should be another great game for Thomas Tuchel heading into the second leg. Of course, Thomas Tuchel and Chelsea have a game against Crystal Palace in the League, London derby, so it's going to be quite hard as well in the midweek. So he needs to rotate his players. That is surely what's going to be doing, going to be changing. He has the luxury to do that really with the squad that he has. He has the luxury to change, and we're certainly going to be seeing some changes in the game against Crystal Palace heading into the second leg. But as a result, I think overall it's important for his side to bounce back from the game against West Brom, refute criticisms and show the world why they are favourites, or one of the favourites, to actually win the Champions League, according to some bookies at least, considering the form that they've been in. And, Thomas Tuchel, for all the criticism and for all the slack he's been getting since the game against West Bromwich in the weekend last week, I think he done a pretty good job, I think, with Chelsea, and he deserves some recognition, he deserves some credit, really, even with that result, and he's getting them into a semi-final of the Champions League, potentially, so we will see, really, how things are going to be panning out for Chelsea, but I assume they have enough in them to really get the job done and finish the job in the second leg. From the Champions League to the biggest competition in Europe, aka the Europa League. Of course, that is sarcastic. I read it to remind you with this because some people might believe that it's actually the greatest competition in Europe, but it is the quarter-final of the Europa League. Some interesting fixtures here. Really, Ajax versus Roma is a fixture that, on a normal season or in a perfect time should be a Champions League fixture, considering the pedigree of those two sides, the history that they have in Europe, although Roma with no big European achievements in the Champions League in particular, but for Ajax, they have the pedigree, I think, to not be in such competitions, but that's the way it goes, really. Dropping from the Champions League, now they find themselves in the quarterfinal of the Europa League. They might fancy winning it, really, but they're winning the league in Netherlands, so there's no problem, really, in getting the Champions League exactly, but as a trophy and as a European trophy goes, Ajax have been deprived of those for a long, long while. In Europe, they haven't been winning European trophies for a long time. It's been really depressing for them to spend years and decades without a European trophy. Arsenal facing Slavia Praha, and this is going to be, this is a tricky one for Arsenal, definitely, no question about it, considering not just the games that they have against Olympiacos in the previous round, but also the fact that Slavia Praha managed to eliminate 2 British sides from the competition already in the previous rounds, in Leicester City and in Rangers after that. So it's not exactly the easiest of games for Arsenal, definitely not. Slavia Praha proven to be a great side overall, coming from a group where they were with AC Milan and Lille and Celtic, and coming through with the qualification, beating Leicester City, drawing against Leicester City in the first leg and beating them away to King Power 2-0, and then managing to defeat Rangers at home as well, and ending their undefeated streak under Steven Gerrard is quite the achievement for this side, and certainly that's going to be putting a lot of pressure on Arsenal heading into this one. And again, with the memories of the game against Olympiacos, where they almost slipped up at the last hurdle and had a sort of terrible game overall, really, but they escaped with the skin of their teeth, with a victory overall on both legs. But certainly that was a terrible game to watch for an Arsenal fan perspective. Dinamo Zagreb faces Villareal. That's a game that, probably nobody cares about. Like, that's a textbook, I think, Europa League game, really, considering that the other sides involved in this competition have some European pedigree in them, at least. Villarreal had quite the fleeting participations in the fleeting moments in the Champions League themselves, Dinamo Zagreb as well, but no real pedigree for both those sides, so I think probably nobody's going to be caring about this game, only as far as result is concerned, to follow that. And of course, Granada facing Manchester United in a game that on paper sounds too much unbalanced, really. It certainly sounds like a game where Man United should be having enough quality to overturn Granada, but if you saw Granada this season, in the Europa League in particular, you would know that they're not exactly a side to be messed with. not exactly an easy side. If you look at their standings in the league, they're not exactly in the bad position. They're not exactly in a bad position either. They're really not. They're ninth. They're pretty decent. Maybe they're not going to be qualifying to Europe for sure, but it is going to be definitely a great campaign for them, whatever the result may be against Man United. It's going to be a great campaign for them, getting to the quarterfinal of the Champions League, eliminating Napoli, the likes of Napoli on the way out. It's not exactly the most underwhelming achievement, really. This is a big achievement for Granada. A side like that, with their first European participation, really get to the quarterfinal of the Europa League. That is quite interesting. And, they have nothing to lose, really, again, Man United. As much as it sounds, unbalanced and favourite towards Man United, they don't have anything to lose, really. They're going to be playing the best game. Man United with, the second place in the league, pretty much, in the Premier League, pretty much on lock, really. And, before playing a big fixture as well in the weekend against Tottenham in the Premier League. That fixture is going to be really important for Tottenham, I think, more than Man United, so it's going to be putting the pressure as well on United in that game. So definitely the game in the Premier League is going to be in the back of their minds. The second place might look locked and loaded for the moment, 4 points ahead of Leicester at third, and certainly they have sort of an easier game really against Granada than the other English counterparts in this competition in Arsenal. So overall, I believe that United should be able to go through, should have enough in them to go through over the two legs, of course, and overpower Granada. I can see Man United, Dinamo Zagreb, really. That's a wild prediction for me, but Dinamo Zagreb, considering that they eliminated Tottenham with a dramatic fashion in the second leg, I see them in the semi-final. Probably I would say, Slavia Praha and Ajax maybe are going to be the quartet of the semi-final, and probably it will be Man United versus Ajax really in the semi-final repeat of the 2017 final. That's it from me for this episode. I was your boy, the HOD of the BSP. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version of this podcast, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Enable notifications to receive all the updates, of course, from the podcast episodes. Listen to that on Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any other platform. And of course, follow us on social media, site BSP on Twitter, page SitePod on Instagram. Help us on the way to our first K. And until next time, I'll be seeing you soon. Goodbye.